This is the second day on section 6 of chapter 3, comparing and ordering rational numbers. So let's take a look at our first problem here. It asks us to order the numbers from least to greatest, and then we're going to graph them on a number line. So let's go ahead and change this 9/16 to the decimal form. So again, top dog in the doghouse there. And when I'm doing that, I'm thinking of 16 into 9, and it doesn't go into 9, so then I try 90, and then I'll try 5 for the first number. And when I do that, I end up with 80. And that ends up working out because I have something smaller than 16. So I got to continue to go. 16 into 100, well, let's try one more there. Let's try 6. And that's just going to be 16 more than 80. And so 16 more than 80 is going to be 96. And that makes a 4 at the end. And this is as far as I really need to go. I need to go, actually, I can stop right here because you see how it's 5, 6. And over here we have 5, 4, and 6, 5. So I can compare the numbers right from this point. So I don't need to go any further. So I know this is 0.56. I'm going from least to greatest, so I'm looking at the tenths value first, 5. And so we have a 5 here, and we have a 5 here, and a 6 here. So I know this is the largest number. The largest because it's bigger. So now I'm comparing these two to see which one's bigger. So when I look at it, I see a 6 here, and I see a 4. 4 is the smallest. So this is the smallest number. And so I'll start with that number, and I'll start with 0 and 54 hundredths. Then I'll move to the next one, 0.56. This 9/16 is the next one. The largest one is that 65 hundredths. So I didn't have to figure out 9/16 all the way to its exact decimal form. I was able just to get it from going just 2 spaces. So remember that for the next problem. So let's take a look at it. We have numbers 3, 3, and 3 in the ones place. So now I need to compare the tenths place. So now I need to go ahead and change that number, the 4/9, into the decimal form. So if you remember the rule with ninths, you get it pretty quick. If you don't, then you just got to do the work. 9 into 4 goes 0 times, but 9 into 40 goes 4 times. That makes 36, and you'll see how you get another 4. So you know that 4 repeats. So it's the same thing as 3.44. And that's as far as we need to go because you see they're both in the hundredths place. So let's start comparing the numbers. So we look at the tenths place now. We got a 4, a 1, and a 4. So this tells me this is the smallest number right here. So we can start with that, 3.14. And now we need to compare these two. So we're comparing the place values here. We're into the hundredths now. We have a 4 here and a 9 here. This one is smaller. So that's the next one we'll write. Now, instead of writing this number, let's go ahead and rewrite the original number, 3 and 4/9. And the last one is that 3.49. So this next one has some negative numbers. So remember, when you have negative numbers, the smaller ones are further from 0. So the smaller, we'll say the smaller negatives are further from 0. So opposed to the positive ones that are further from 0. So let's take a look at what we'll end up seeing here. So let's compare the 7/12 and the 7/10. So we need to change that into a decimal. So we might not need to go as far as you think, because 12 doesn't go into 7, but it does go into 70. We have 6 times the 72, so let's go 5 times. And so right there, I know what the number is going to be, about negative 2.5. I don't need to go any further than this, because this one's only to the tenths place also, and they're not the same number. So I can see which one's smaller. The one that's smaller is the one further from 0. This is further from 0. This is closer to 0. So negative 2.7 is the first number, then the negative 2 and 7/12. Because that's the next negative number, and this is the biggest number because it's positive, negative 2 and 59 hundredths. So taking a look at our next one, it says a horsepower is the power needed to lift 33,000 pounds 1 foot in 1 minute. Well, it is equivalent to 746 watts. Okay, this is going to be an important number. Express 525 watts as a portion of a horsepower as a fraction and decimal, round to the nearest thousandths. All right, so let's go ahead and start with this one. We have 746 watts. This is a whole. This is the whole. And this, because that represents 1 horsepower, whole, 1 horsepower. This is the part, or the portion. And so that is the top of the fraction. So we write down 525 over 746. Now in your problem, in your homework, you might be able to reduce this fraction. I cannot reduce this fraction because this is an odd, this is an even, so 2 doesn't go into it. I check 3, and when I add these numbers, 7, 4, and 6 add to make 17, and 3 doesn't go into 17. 5 is not a common factor, so I am out of luck on trying to reduce this any further, but I do have to go ahead and do the work to change it to a decimal form. That's going to be tricky. Now let's see how I might end up doing that. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at, instead of 746, I'm going to cross that 46 off, actually instead of crossing that whole 46 off, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and cross off this 25 as well. And so I'm thinking of really 7 into 5, or 7 into 50, because it's not going to go in there evenly. So 7 goes into 50 7 times. So that gives me an idea about what to start with. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and add the decimal point. And again, I know it doesn't go into 525, so I'm going 7 into 50, or 7 into maybe 52 here. If I cross off these two, I'm thinking now 7 into 52 goes 7 times. So I'm going to try 7. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to try it. So now I go ahead and do the work. 7 times 6 is 42. This makes 28 plus 4 makes 32. And 7 times 7 is 49 plus the 3 makes 52. Wow, that worked out really well because I'm only a little ways off. So I got to borrow here, remember. This to a 4, and so that's going to change that to 28. And so I add that 0. Now I'm thinking, how many times does this number go into 280? Well, that's 0 times. So now I've made it to the 1,000th or 100th place here. I need to go 2 more spaces. And the reason I have to go 2 more spaces is because I have to round to the nearest 1,000th. And so the next number, now I'm crossing off, I'm doing 746 into this large number here. So cross off 2 zeros here in these 2 numbers, like these 2 and these 2, and think of 7 into 28. How many times does 7 go into 28? Well, that's 4 times exactly, but this is bigger than 7. So let's go ahead and try a 3. And we go ahead and do that, and that makes 18. And that's 12 plus 1 makes 13. And that's 21 plus 1 makes 22. So I do the subtraction. Got to borrow a bunch. So this makes a 7, this to a 9, and then I have a 2. This makes 6 and 5. So that ends up working. So now I have to add another 0. I have to go 1 more place. So I do the same thing. So as I'm doing it, I think of 7 into 56. Just 7 into 56 goes 7 times. It does go 8 times, but it's not going to be 8 because this is bigger than 700. So I'm going to try 7 times again. So let's put a 7 up here, and that ends up, I've already done that, and that makes 5, 2, 2, 2. Okay, so I go ahead and do the subtraction. Got to borrow all the way back from the 6, change that to a 5, this to an 11. So that makes 3, 9, 8. Okay, it works. Now, I'm done. I don't have to go any further because this is the 10,000th place. The 1,000th place is right here. And so I want to round to the 1,000th place. So I need to look at the 7, and the 7 is big enough to round that up. So my number is going to be equal to 0 and 704. So I rounded that number up. 7 was big enough to round the 3 up. 704 thousandths. So there's the answer there. And taking a look at our next problem, it says the density of Jupiter compared to Earth, having a density of 1, is 0.24. The density of Saturn is 0.124 compared to the density of Earth. Which planet has a greater density, Jupiter or Saturn? So let's compare these numbers. Let's compare this one here and this one here. Now, as we compare decimals, we're looking at place value. So you're looking at the 10th place, and I see this number, 2, is bigger than the number 1. See, 2 is greater than 1. So what that means is that this is the larger number. This is larger. And so I would say which one has the greater density? Well, the one that's 0.24, and that is Jupiter. So just because you see 124 and you think, oh, that's bigger than 24, you could always add a 0 here, and you see that makes the same number of place values. And you could say, well, 240 is bigger than 124. And so that's another way to show how this is the larger number. Well, one more problem here. We're looking at these NFL field goal success rates. So on this next problem, they're asking us to, in which year did the NFL teams have the greatest success rate? And so we're looking at the largest number here. And so you compare these place values, and you see all of the first place value, like this one's 7, 7, 7, 7, 8. 8, that's bigger. 7, 7, 7, 7. That 8 is the largest. So that would say that in 1996, that was the year in which the NFL had the greatest success rate in making a field goal. And in which year was the success rate of the NFL's teams greater than .775 and less than .78? So it has to be in between these numbers. So we need to find one that's in between them. So we looked at the 7s, and then I need to see another 7. So I need to find another 7 here. So this one doesn't work because 2 is not a 7. So I'm looking at this number here. See, this is 6. I need to find a 7. And so this is an 8. Now I need something that is smaller, less than .78. So less than .78 would mean something smaller than an 8. So I need a 7 there. So that's not going to work. Now this one has a 7, but notice that it's bigger. 7.5. 775 is bigger than this one, 774. It needs to be greater than the 775. So this one's not greater. This one's too big because it's 0.8, not even 0.7. Over here we have 0.781. Well, anything that has an 8 in the hundredths place is not going to work. This one is too big because it's 796. Here is one that could work because it's 777. And here we have 797. This does not work. But let's take a look at this one. 0.777. You see, if I added in these numbers so they all have the same number of place values, 775, and then 777, and then 780. So this one is in between these numbers because 777 is between 775 and 780. So the year would have been 1999. So there we go. Well, one more thing I want to take a look at is ordering these on a number line. And since I did not do that, and I said I was supposed to here graph the numbers on a number line, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's go ahead and draw our number line. And as I look at these numbers, 0.54 is the smallest number. And then 9/16. See, that was really close to 0.54. So I'm going to write that pretty close to the 54 hundredths. And 0.65 is a little further away. So I'm going to give that a little bit more of a gap. That's all I'm looking for, is that you see which one it's closer to. Don't just write them in any order. Give me which one it's closer to. And let's take a look at the next one here. We have 3 and 1400ths. Okay, that's the smallest one, so that one can just go off to the left-hand side. Now, 3 and 4/9 was 3.4 repeated. And then 3.49. So I'm going to write 3 and 4/9 here, but it's closer to this other one, 3.49. So I wrote it above because I was kind of running out of room. It was getting squished over here if I wrote it right next to the 3 and 4/9. But I want you to see how these two are definitely closer together than this one over here. And then the last one, okay, so we got negative 2.7. We know that's the smallest. And then 7/12 was negative 2.5. So that was pretty close. Negative 2 and 7/12. Really close to negative 2 and 7/10. And then 2 and 59 hundredths, that is way far away from those two. So that's what I'm looking for, is show me which one is closer to the other. And then one will be kind of far away. So that's what I'm looking for on tonight's homework. Well, good luck.